Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at this webinar today. And thank you so much, Nick, for being our guest. I know you've been really busy with uh, developing Insights Hub for Question Pro, so we're really glad to have you here, have you take out the time.
Yeah, of course. Glad to be here. I love this subject, so it's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. So while we have people trickling in, we'll give everybody a couple of minutes to join in and settle down. Um, Nick, you've been helping startups for a really long time run research projects and
hmm
over 1,000 startups, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. Not all of them were big full-fledged startups. Some of them were just
Yeah.
like the very very early stages. But yeah, I've run over 1,000 surveys for separate different startups, different teams over about the past 6 or 7 years.
Oh, that's brilliant. And then all this content and things that you're taking us through today, that's a lot of the learnings from everything that transpired during these projects.
Yeah, exactly. This is all kind of reality based things that I
Mm-hmm.
learned actually out there in the field, getting my hands dirty with programming, fielding, analyzing data, cleaning data. So yeah, over those years, I learned a lot about what it takes to get a survey project done and done well, and then ideally, to kind of make sure that all loose ends are kind of tied up at the end of the project, not just getting, just data because you need data, but making sure you're able to move forward with actual decisions, the day you get the report back. So yeah, all kind of based on what I've learned over the years. Always, this is a presentation I update often as well. So I think, I'm sure it's still very, very relevant.
Yeah, no, and that's brilliant, absolutely, to actually get an insight into what happens in the real world. And so it's not just concepts, but really how these concepts have helped and what you do with the insights really once you have some data. Right. I'm sure
hmm
we'll get some interesting questions along the way as well. And once you're done with your, taking us through everything, we'll open up the floor. We'll bring in any questions that people have dropped in. So while we're talking, please feel free to put in your questions, whether you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and we'll pick them up, and Nick can kind of um, give us all the answers. Right.
Yeah, sounds
Okay.
good.
Perfect. And now, so just before I leave you to blow our minds, I'll just take a minute to talk about, how this came about, our market research for startups program that we're running at Question Pro. So I know a lot of our attendees today are already taking advantage of this program, so absolutely love that. But for everybody else who's just joined us, a little bit of information. Earlier this year, we opened up our research license to early stage startups. And the goal really is to kind of help companies, help early stage companies do the right research, collect the right data and insights at the right time, and not really lose out on critical data points like your product market fit or your getting the pricing right. Not lose out on these critical points just because the cost of a traditional research product might be too high for a startup. So we've seen that in the long run that really doesn't help you. So we opened up our license for early stage startups. That's been going pretty well. And we also noticed that along with just having the tools, our partners also needed some assets, a little bit of hand holding, a little bit of expertise in terms of how do I really launch these projects, what should I be doing at what time. And so we brought about some assets. We brought in templates. We brought in webinars from experts to kind of help you figure out what you should be doing when. And hopefully, this webinar is going to help you do exactly that. So I will now leave you to it, Nick. I will go off the screen and let you talk to our audience.
Sounds good. Thank you. So I'm gonna have a slide deck today. Just want to make sure everybody can see it. We are, like I said, this is a presentation I've given a few times. I continuously update as I get as I have more experience with projects that go well. Some projects don't go so well. What happened? How can we make sure that every project goes as well as it possibly can? Just get some if I can get some confirmation that you guys can see the screen here.
Um, Not up yet, but I will let you know it is. Yep, we have your screen up now.
Awesome. Great. So, yeah, like Prachi said, I've done this. I've literally done this, no exaggeration, more than 1,000 times. Fielded surveys like this. Now, they weren't all the same. Some of them are very different, but there's a general model that we follow with most surveys for what I call just like new concepts. It can be a new business, a new brand, a new feature, a new service, a new product. It doesn't have to. This doesn't have to be something that you use to validate an entire startup idea. You can use it to validate a product idea, a feature idea, anything new that you want to get consumers feedback from before you launch it. The idea is to do this before. Now, kind of full disclosure, most, probably a little more than 50% of the startups that I've worked with came to me after they had launched something and it didn't go so well. They realized either their investor kind of informed them, or they just kind of decided over the course of doing their launch that they didn't do enough research. A lot of founders kind of just jump in on intuition. They do a lot of secondary research. They might look up, studies or reports that have been done in the past about their concept, their market, etc. But there's a lot more value you can get by doing a specific survey for your specific product to your specific target audience. If you do this, I can almost guarantee that you're never going to launch something that's just going to fail. You may learn over the course of the survey that the willingness to pay is less than your break-even costs. You learn something like that, it can be discouraging, but it's better to know that before you launch than after. It also opens up opportunities for learning, for kind of pivoting, changing, altering your launch, your messaging, your marketing, to make sure that your launch is successful. So that's what this is about, getting feedback that will help you have a more successful launch of whatever it is that you're launching, product, business, etc. So first of all, I mentioned enough about me already. This is a quick bio. I was a survey analyst many years ago, founded a market research agency for startups, ran that for 6 years, joined the Question Pro team earlier this year as a director. On the right side there, those are my 3 kids. Someone once told me if you show a picture of your kids at the beginning of a presentation, everyone will like your presentation better, they'll like you better. So that's me, my attempt to do that. But I have personally surveyed more than 2 million consumers since 2016 across all of these different surveys. Some are repeat surveys, brand trackers, vast majority of these for startup teams of some kind. First of all, what is a market research survey? Good question. Here are some survey questions. You might see questions like this all the time. I really like pointing out the one on the left side of the screen. That's an Expedia survey. They used to send this. I don't know if they still do, but they used to send this to every single user of Expedia who booked tickets through their platform. It's happy with your room. It's a smiley face and a sad face, basically yes or no. If you say yes, you get some follow-ups, what you liked about it. If you say no, which I said here, some other follow-ups, what you didn't like about it. On the right side of the screen, there's actually a mistake in the one on the top, but how responsive have we been to your questions or concerns? At the bottom is a net promoter score question. How likely are you to recommend us? These are survey questions. These are not market research survey questions. These are customer feedback. You're getting feedback from people that already use your product. Now, that can be a form of market research, but it's not what we're talking about here for teams that don't have a database of 15,000 customers to survey and get feedback from. A market research survey in the context of today for startups, they look like this. On the left side, which of these logos do you prefer? These are 2 versions of a Pizza Hut logo. Let's say they were rebranding, which they actually did with these 2 logos not too long ago. In the middle is the app Uber. How often would you use this app? This is something that they did a lot of research when they launched to get a sense of, hey, is this a product that people are going to think about as like their daily driver? Are they going to just drop their car and Uber to work every day? Or is this something people see and they say, hey, I'd use that to go to the airport, or something like that. On the right side is the Jacksonville Landing. Now, I live in Jacksonville, Florida. It was a kind of an entertainment center on the riverfront. It was demolished, and they've done research to ask people, what they want to see replace that venue. So these are versions of market research survey questions. So it's getting information from your general or from your target audience about your concept, not customer feedback. That's something different. That might be an obvious point, but there's often confusion on that point, especially from teams that that they don't have any customers. They think, well, how can we field a survey? I'll show you later on how you can do a survey without any customers. Here's a formal definition. A market research survey is the quantitative analysis of the market for a particular product or service by way of consumers' self-reported sentiments and inclinations. I don't like that definition. It's too long, it's too complicated. In the context of what we're talking about today, what we're talking about are consumers' expressed feelings about your concept. You want to know what your target audience, your target consumers think or feel about what it is you're bringing to market, a new product, a new service, a new feature, whatever it is. One of my favorite market research quotes is by Kate Zabriskie, and it says, "The customer's perception is your reality." Now, over the years, the best startups, the most successful startup launches that I have been a part of came from teams that were completely obsessed with what their target audience was thinking, not obsessed with what they wanted to bring to market, not obsessed with their assumptions or even like their best educated guesses about what customers want, but teams that are really serious about taking all of that kind of intuition and pairing it with actual feedback from their target audience. So the customer's perception needs to be kind of your North Star, your guiding star. You should be doing as much of these kind of surveys as you can. It's not something you have to do every single time you make a business decision, but when you're launching something new, even if you say, hey, I'm really confident about this product, we just know because we worked in this industry forever that people are going to like this. There's always kind of margins wherein you're going to be wrong about your assumptions, like what people are willing to pay, whether this is the right name for the product, whether this branding is just like a little bit off. Sometimes, I've worked with teams that have fielded a survey about their brand, and they found out that like 85% of their target audience said, hey, that brand looks just like this other brand that they know about, which is a competitor. They weren't even aware of that competitor's new brand. That's like the exact same thing as what they thought they were bringing to market. So that's where kind of, on every margin of your decision-making process, every surrounding a launch, get data, get market research data. And here's how to do that. The three benefits of doing a market research survey: number one is to kill the echo chamber. Kind of just alluded to that. A lot of teams come to the table with a lot of assumptions, with kind of a big cheerleader group around them, people that say, hey, we believe in what we're doing, we know this is going to work. You don't know that, only the customers know that. So you got to kill that echo chamber with feedback from your target audience. Consumers. Number two is to impress or find stakeholders. A lot of teams have come to me in the past in order to get data to present to investors. Sometimes investors have turned them down and said they need to see data. Other teams just know that, hey, they have a great concept, they have a great idea, they have great experience. What they don't have is data to show, just to give any kind of prediction about what you can expect, let's say of what people are willing to pay for a product. To integrate that into your overall pitch. Investors love to see data like this. And then number three is to make quick progress. So startups always take longer than you expect. Always, always, always. I think it was Jeff Bezos that said it takes 10 years to build anything truly great. Now, hopefully it doesn't take 10 full years for you guys, but it's going to take longer than you expect. One great way to push that along is to use consumer sentiment data to help you make decisions that will absolutely boost your sales and make your launch more successful. Actually, I'm going to skip over this slide here. Designing your market research survey. So there are three ingredients to a market research survey for startups. Number one, who is my target market? Number two, is my concept in demand? And number three, what are people willing to pay? You should be able to address all of this in one good survey. Now, you can really hone in on each one of these and develop like a full kind of survey apparatus questionnaire around each one of these questions. A lot of teams will go back, and if they went through this whole process and answered all of these three questions, but they were a little confused about the target market, something they learned was unexpected, you can go back and focus on that aspect. But these are the three things you should be thinking about when you design a market research survey for the first time for your startup or your concept. The first question, who is my target market? There are kind of two sides of this coin. Number one is demographics, gender, age, zip code, income. Ask those only insofar as it's actually important to what it is you're trying to accomplish. If gender just does not matter for your product, don't ask about gender. If it's not going to affect the way you message, market, price, just don't ask about it. It's just wasted space. So I see a lot of teams that just kind of run through the full gamut of demographic questions. Be careful about the ones you ask. We want to minimize the number of questions in this survey. So pick only relevant demographic questions. On the other side of this coin are behavioral questions. Now, this is where you need to think really, really deeply about what it is you want to know about this market. How often do you check your phone, for example? If you're launching an app, let's say it's like a fitness tracker app, and you're going to send the user notifications about their activity, about their goals. Do people who check their phone every day or every minute, are those the people you want to pitch this to? Or is it people who don't check their phone often, who need that notification in order to be reminded about their workout goals or whatever it is? So think about the types of behavioral questions that might help you predict whether or not someone is going to be interested in your concept. So it's all about prediction. Is the frequency of checking their phone, is that going to help you predict interest in your concept? How much they spend per month on their dog, or if you're launching a pet related product, are people who spend a lot of money on their dog going to be more interested in this concept than people who spend less, or maybe vice versa? Ask questions like that you can use as segmentations later on to see, hey, are these people more likely to be interested in my concept than these people? I would stick to like 4 or 5 of these. Hit the ones that you absolutely know are probably relevant. Sometimes you're going to have a pretty good sense of like, yes, if they spend a lot on their dog, or if they use Gmail, they're going to be more interested in what it is I'm bringing to market. But still validate that with a survey, because you want to know like who is the absolutely most interested based on some of these behavioral questions. So the ones that are probably going to yield some interesting data, put that in this section. So demographics on one hand, behavioral on the other. The second part of this survey should be something regarding demand, or is my product or service or concept in demand? The first thing you want to do in this section of your survey is ask about similar and competing products. If there's one thing you take away from today, it's this. Now, first kind of thing I need to dispel with this idea that there's nothing like my product on the market. I hear that all the time. I've heard that a million times. It's never been true, not once. There's always something like it on the market. If your product is like vastly better than the way people are currently doing what it is you're helping them do now, whatever they're currently using is the thing in their mind that is similar to your product. So you want to ask people about how they use competing or similar products. Do they like them? What do they like about them? How often do they use them? So I've put up here, Coke and Pepsi, kind of two alternatives, very similar. I can hardly tell the difference. But ask about their experience with similar products before you mention your concept. You'll learn a lot from this. If they're extremely satisfied with the solutions that exist, that's an interesting sign. It's an interesting data point for you and your team. You're going to have to really work on the messaging to persuade them that your product is better. If they're really, really unsatisfied with people who use one particular alternative, but not people who use a different alternative, that's a really important tell for your marketing team or marketing efforts to say, hey, this is where we need to market this product to users of this product who are really unsatisfied. So this is a proxy for the way people use and engage with the product or the service that you're bringing to market. Number 2 is to now ask, after you've gauged, how they're currently doing what it is you want to help them do, present your concept. This is a really important part of the survey, as you can probably imagine. There's definitely a wrong way to do this and definitely a right way to do this. So we're going to start with the wrong way. Here's an example of an iPod, or an example description of an iPod. It says, iPod is a revolutionary way to experience your favorite music. Its cutting-edge technology puts the world's library of music in the palm of your hand. No more waiting on CD shipments or slow downloads to start enjoying the music you love wherever and whenever you want to listen. So a lot of teams that I've presented this to, if they're in the room with me, I say, hey, what's wrong with this concept? And they say, well, it sounds great. It's like a great sales pitch. I want that. The problem is, yes, everybody who reads that is going to say, yeah, why not? I like it. You're going to be left with a data set of a bunch of people that say they like your product, and you're going to have no way of knowing who actually likes it and who doesn't like it. Everyone likes this. You've given them something. You've called it a revolutionary experience. It's way too much. It's a sales pitch. You want to give people reasons to say no in your survey because you want to find out the lowest hanging fruit, who is absolutely most interested. If they have no reason to say no, you're going to get a really inflated finding for this inflated results for this question about demand. And frankly, no investor is going to believe you when you say, hey, 89% of general public says that they want to buy my product. It's just not realistic. This is a much better presentation. iPod is a handheld electronic Apple device that stores your music collection. Take it anywhere and plug in your headphones to listen anytime to any song you own. Handheld, electronic, Apple, device, headphones, any song that you own, not any song in the world, not the world's library of music. This is a very specific, lots of adjectives, and gives people reason to say no. If they don't like Apple devices, if they just hate them, they see that, they say no, not interested. You want to know that as part of this market research survey. You don't want to know that 89% of people want to buy your product. You want to know that 48% of people who like Apple, or who don't like Apple, will not purchase this product. So you can focus your marketing, you can hone your messaging, you can find out the lowest hanging fruit to make, like I said earlier, quick progress after your launch. So be specific, give people reasons to say no. I know it sounds crazy, but you don't want, this isn't a sales pitch. Don't be afraid about making your product seem unattractive to the people that ultimately in the real world are not going to be interested in buying it. You want to find out who those people are. Final section of this larger section of the survey is to ask this question. Assuming the price was reasonable, really important preface, how likely would you be to consider buying this product? So you want to get out of the consumer's mind in this section the idea that, a lot of them are going to see this and they're going to say, I'm interested, but that just sounds way expensive, so I'm going to say it's not interested. You lead with this preface, assuming the price was reasonable. Give people a sense like, if I could afford this, if it seemed reasonable to me, how likely would I be to consider buying it? Ask this question basically word for word after you present your concept. You can wordsmith it a little bit, based, like assuming the monthly price was reasonable. If it's a subscription product, if it's a service, of course, replace with service. But this is going to be the question that you use to filter and segment your answers later on. People that say they're 100% or extremely interested, you're going to separate those from everybody else and see what the differences are in terms of demographics, behavioral, the types of substitute or alternative products they use. This is a really, really important key question. Use a 5-point scale in your answer to this. Everything from not at all likely, slightly likely, moderately likely, very likely, and extremely likely. Use that scale or some very close version of it. Finally, what are people willing to pay? Now, what you see on the screen is called a Van Westendorp question set. I recommend this for most studies, or for most startups, not for every startup. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But the way this works is you ask, at what price would you consider the product or service too expensive? Price so low you'd question its quality. Getting expensive, but you'd still consider it. Or a bargain, a great buy for the money. You take everyone's answers to these 4 questions and you can generate a graph like what you see there on the left side of the screen. This gives you kind of that square in the middle. That is where your product should be priced based on people's answers. This is an extremely powerful question set. I have seen this work for hundreds of teams. They get a square. Sometimes it's like way off what they expected. Sometimes it's right what they expected, but they are able to present this graph to investors. I promise you, investors are going to love seeing this. So this is an extremely powerful question set. I highly recommend it for almost everyone. Now, where I don't recommend it is this. If your product is, now I know that it said there's no such thing as a product with no alternatives, but if your product is something very new and very novel, maybe there's an alternative way of doing what your product does, but there is not an alternative product to your product or to your concept. In that case, you're going to get a pretty wide distribution of answers to this question. Your graphs are probably going to look kind of funny because people will say, I just have no idea. Like, what is too expensive? $10,000. What's too cheap? $100. I have no idea. Your graph's going to look funny. You're still going to get some type of trend, but the distribution is going to be so wide that investors, they're going to look at your graph, they're going to dig into it, and they're going to say, hey, this is not, the distribution is massive. How useful is this for us? If your concept is completely novel and completely new, and people do not have experience buying anything like it, I suggest asking this other question. I thought I had a slide on it here, but I suggest asking a question: how willing would you, or how likely would you be to pay X price for this product? Ask that question 5 times. Pick 5 different price points. The middle price point is your target price point, maybe your break-even cost, probably something that you're targeting above break-even. The 4 other prices, 2 higher than that and 2 lower than that. And what that's going to do is educate your customer or your audience a little bit on what this product costs, how much to expect to pay for it. It is going to bias them slightly toward this range, but the range isn't going to be too narrow. You're not saying, $100 versus $105 versus $110. If your break-even cost is $100, ask them about their likeliness to buy this for $100. Ask them about the likeliness to buy for $120. Ask them about $200. What's gonna happen is you're gonna generate a curve. There's gonna be a drop off as the price goes up. You're able to show that to investors and say, at this price, 80% of customers say they'd be willing to buy it. At $120, let's say, 40% are willing to buy it. $200, 2% are willing to buy. That's an extremely valuable price curve for you. But pick prices that are near your break even, too higher and too lower, and you'll generate a pretty good curve that gives you a sense of what the drop off looks like. Again, only use that if you think that this question set on the screen, the Van Westendorp, is going to confuse respondents because your product is something they have no experience paying for ever. So now, how do you actually field the survey? How do you gather data, get responses? Number one, actually, a quick note on programming it, which you should be able to do in question. You are able to do in Question Pro. Avoid unnecessarily complex question types. I know in Question Pro there's like 60 different question types. They're all amazing. They're all research backed. They all work, to the T. Don't use the complex ones in this survey. You might get some cool looking data back, but if you don't have like a ton of responses, or if you're not really sure why you're using a particular question type, don't use it. Stick to the basics. You'll learn so much just from the basics, I promise. Use scales as much as possible. And then mostly avoid open-ended questions. You can ask a few, but they create a lot of respondent fatigue. It's really important if you ask them to kind of make them a little bit like I say leading, not in a way to bias them, but rather than saying, what do you think about this? Open-ended. Say, what's a word that comes to mind when you see this concept or something like that. But minimize open-ended questions generally. Number two is to require all questions. No exceptions. Require all of your questions. And then number three, take advantage of the branching and logic options inside of Question Pro. Use this as much as you can. If your product does kind of have a different, you think it's going to be perceived differently by people based on their gender or based on their age, ask a few follow-up questions, to those different groups. Using the survey logic that is available to you inside of Question Pro, just to get a little bit more granular data about those different segments. Fielding your survey. Now, the hard way to do this is to ask your friends, family, colleagues, forums, your Facebook, go to Facebook groups, go to subreddits, ask your classmates. It's low cost. You'll be sending a lot of emails. People will get annoyed by your asking. You're not going to get very many responses, I promise you, unless you run one of the biggest subreddits in the world. It's going to be tough to get enough responses for you to make sure that your data is something you can base your decisions on. Feel free to send it to all of these people, but don't expect that you're going to get 600 responses, have a 4% margin of error, when you get your data back. Just expect that it's going to be difficult. You're also going to see a lot of positive bias from especially from your friends and your network. People they like being positive. They like being encouraging. They like to tell you, hey, this product looks great. But ultimately you want unbiased feedback. So the easy way, which is more expensive, is to use a panel provider that guarantees a minimum number of responses for a reasonable price. Lots of high quality responses is the effect of that. Now, I think that as part of our Question Pro for Startups program, and I'll verify this afterwards with Prachi, is that you do get responses built in. Through Question Pro Audience, you can get as many responses as you want. It's built into our platform. It's really easy to use. I've used it myself. I know Tim, who runs that product. I highly recommend making use of that. Highly recommend it. When I say I've surveyed 2 million consumers, this is how I did it, using panel providers, using Question Pro Audience. I did not get 2 million respondents by asking my friends to take my surveys. Analyzing your survey data. So once you've programmed your survey, you've sent it out through Question Pro Audience to your friends, to your network, you need to analyze the data. Now, Question Pro has some pretty good built-in dashboard tools that will automatically generate graphs that you need to see right off the bat. If you go to the Analytics tab in Question Pro, you can see automatically generated every question in your survey, every answer given to each of those questions presented in a graphically, I think, a very attractive, intuitive way. Um, it's tempting to just jump right to that. You still need to do a little bit of data cleaning. Now, Question Pro Audience does a really good job cleaning this data for you. You hardly need to do this if you field your survey through Question Pro Audience. But if your investors have questions about what we do to your data, if you want to take a look at your raw data on top of the data cleaning that we kind of programmatically build in for you, here's what you do. Number one are speeders, people that took the survey too fast. You need to discard them from your data set. I say don't throw them out necessarily, but if you're using our audience product and you're getting a lot of responses, don't worry about throwing out a small handful of responses just because they went too fast through your survey. A rule of thumb there is if they took less than half the median time to finish the survey, flag them and I would just discard them if you're using Question Pro. Number two are flatliners. If they selected like the top answer option to every single question, they need to be flagged. Don't throw them out necessarily. They often are also speeders. If they're also speeders, then you throw them out. If they took their time through the survey, if they gave some, thoughtful, open-ended questions, keep them in your data set. Just flag them because number three, if they also leave gibberish and open-endeds, then you need to throw them out. So you flag them so that you know, hey, if they flagged, on two of these three different things, they probably need to be discarded from your data set. In Question Pro, all you do is you check that respondent, you click discard, and they're thrown out of your report. So again, if you're using our product, you don't have to worry about this too much. You might see a few gibberish answers, open-endeds. Those aren't even always bad. A lot of people will give good responses. The open-ended, they might just say, I don't know, and that's all that they say. That's their answer. It's their honest answer. You need to take that seriously. But these are the kind of three things that we look for, and it's the three things you can also look for if you want. Analyzing your data, top lines are what I said before that Question Pro will generate for you automatically. Just every response to your survey questions, no segmentations, no filters. Segmentations are when you take, like I said earlier, everybody that said they are extremely interested in your concept and compare their answers to everyone that said anything else. I'm very interested down to not at all interested. See how those people differ from one another. What's likely to predict whether someone is interested or not interested. That's what a segmentation is. You can also segment on gender, on age, on behavioral data to get a sense of hey, what who's interested in this concept? How do males think about it? How do females think about it? How can that inform the way that we market, brand, and message the product? Clustering is a more advanced analysis. If you have a lot of data, you can build these kind of consumer or respondent profiles and cluster them together. Profiles that you think match the target audience that you're already targeting or that you already kind of suspect are interested. So it's a way to kind of find out, whether your hypothesis about this market is true or not. That can get pretty advanced. I'm not going to dive into that here, but it is a way to analyze data, and the tools built into Question Pro make that pretty easy. Now, once you have gathered your data back, you've cleaned your data, you've built a dashboard in Question Pro. How do you present this to stakeholders? Number one, give them an executive summary. Don't just throw the whole dashboard at them. Give them, I literally mean one sentence of what the main takeaway is. Maybe then a few bullet points with supporting evidence. That's what investors want to see. If that piques their interest, they'll look into the study in more detail. If it doesn't pique their interest, they're not going to look at the whole study. They're not going to look at the methodology, all the numbers, figures, etc. So an executive summary is really important, extremely condensed, concise description of what you learned and what the takeaway is relevant to your launch. Number two is methodology, how you did this, when the survey was fielded, where you hosted it at Question Pro or whatever tool you used, how many people were surveyed, how many people maybe you threw out, from the data set after data cleaning, just to kind of give them a little bit more assurance that, hey, you've looked at this data in detail. You even threw some of the respondents out based on quality concerns. Everybody left in the data set is extremely high quality. And then talk about your sample size, how many people you surveyed. It's kind of a no-brainer. The more, the better. If you surveyed 40 people, no one's going to take it seriously. If you survey 400 people, that says a lot about your commitment to this concept, your investment in the idea, and then gives you a really, really good kind of confidence, low margin of error about the decisions you're going to make based on this data. So the more respondents, the better. Usually 300 to 400 is a good place to start with a survey like this. But the more you can do, the better. Like I said, if you can survey 1,000 people and then dive into the segment of people that said they're most interested in your concept, there's a lot of kind of, really, really deep dive analysis you can do on like your lowest hanging fruit customers, who they are, what makes them tick, how much they are willing to pay, etc. That's all that I have as far as the presentation goes. Like Prachi said, I'm happy to take questions. Happy to hang around for as long as it takes to kind of make sure you guys are up to speed about anything related to what I just discussed.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. I think we got a lot of very specific walkthroughs and examples, which is absolutely critical. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of
Great.
course. Like I said, I'm passionate about this, so it's always exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the big questions was, which you addressed, is how to really get in touch with the target audience, which you covered
Hmm.
beautifully in terms of, just the forums and Facebook and everything, communities in that sense, and then also having access to the panel. And like you said, with Question Pro's startups license, you do get access to 100 Gen Pop sample, which is free of cost to begin with.
Hmm.
And then as you start to need more, there you have $1 samples, and then you can, but we can, depending on what your use case is, we're always happy to work one-on-one with startups and kind of figure out how we can really help them. So yeah, that'd be great. And so for Facebook and Reddit and let's say all these other communities where you're really posting, let's say, a link to get people to fill out your surveys,
Hmm.
uh, how would you recommend, just filtering out? Because like you said, that the number of responses you get could be huge, right? So I'm guessing also using how you program the surveys.
Yes. Yeah. So when you do that, it's best to come up with to generate separate links. So you'll send one link to your panel provider. Our Question Pro audience will use one link. Generate another link for your same survey, which is super easy to do in Question Pro. So it's two links to the same survey instrument, and then use the other link for your friends and family. Maybe use a separate one for like for social media, but just create as many links as you'd like. It would be good though to keep them separate so that when you analyze the data, if you find out that the panel data, people love the concept, from Facebook, a Facebook group that you're in, they don't like the concept, there might be some type of bias happening there. You can analyze those separately, but you can also, they will naturally be, or the way Question Pro works is they'll be put into the same bucket. But because you use separate links or separate custom variables also, you can segment that later on just to make sure that you're looking at good data.
Yeah, yeah. Brilliant. And I'm guessing also, so given what you can do when you're programming the survey, and you, like you mentioned, you're typically going to collect demographic information. In the
Hmm.
beginning, we could also put filters to just when you're profiling based
Yes,
on
good
what,
point.
right? So
Yeah,
based
yeah.
on whether it's so for example the generation, maybe if you're only surveying Gen Z's, but somebody age group falls into boomers or millennials, you could filter out right in the beginning, right?
Exactly. I didn't even mention that, but if you're targeting only females, like if your product is for
Mhm.
females, you can do that in Question Pro Audience. You also can do that in survey. So you can ask in the survey, what about gender, and if they say male, you can discard them right there. You don't pay for those respondents, so you won't pay for anything that you're not using.
Yeah, that's great. And then also, well, that already cleans up your data quite a bit, right? So at the
Yes,
end of
yes,
the day,
definitely.
brilliant. And I
Yeah.
think you brought this, the data quality cleanup feature as well. I think you brought that up.
Hmm.
Um, and that's really critical too, right? Like you were saying, if these are just speed traps, if you have people that are just answering the survey really fast, you might not want to consider it in your final data set.
Hmm. Yeah, there's those are, I'd mentioned those three data quality flags: speeders, flatliners, and gibberish responses.
Hmm.
Again, like I said, Question Pro Audience, there are built-in tools that really work on data quality. So it's not like you have to jump into your Question Pro survey and see if any of this data is stuff you can use. Like, you will be able to use this data. But yeah, cleaning, it's as much for your purposes, because or it's as much for your purposes as it is sometimes for investors, because like, even if let's say you do throw out 5% of your sample at the end, it's most likely that that's going to kind of come out in the wash as far as what your data looks like. It's not like those are all going to say I love the product. They're just going to be all over the board. So the numbers aren't going to change too much. It's still a good practice. And then if you show investors that, hey, you did disqualify people because they went too fast, that, like I said, it says a lot about your investment into this project. And it's the professional way to go about this, even though you know that Question Pro has done and does a lot of work on data quality.
Yep, brilliant. And also for those that are just on using surveys, even with the research license, you have the option to use the data quality flags feature. So even if you are just running your survey on Facebook, Reddit, or any other communities, you can still have quality flag set up to say that if it's a speed trap, just flag it.
Hmm.
So like Nick said, you can just go back and then review those
Yeah.
responses and see
So
if you still
basically,
want to
like
keep them.
real time flags. You don't have to
Yeah.
look at the numbers after the fact. Yeah. Maybe I'm a little old school. I was doing this 10 years ago, and we would download the
Yeah.
Excel files, we'd subtract the time completed from the time started. But Question Pro has a lot of that built in, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's so much time saved, right? Just
Oh
versus
yeah, I
going through
spent hours
everything
doing that. Yeah,
manually.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. I think there's another one big question about, so if you, as long as you are not surveying friends and family, outside of that, if you're surveying your general target audience, what would
Hmm.
be a good enough sample size to know that if I have these many responses, I can now
Hmm.
consider my data to be statistically significant?
Yes, good question. So let's say like your target audience is more than like a few 100,000 people. Now, for most products, that is the case, unless it's like a niche kind of B2B product. But if it's like, I always use this example because I thought it was pretty funny. One of my clients was selling slices of ketchup. I don't really know how it worked, but it was like a slice of cheese. It was kind of coagulated. You put it on something
Wow.
warm and it melted into ketchup. So, anyways, that product is millions of possible buyers is the idea. It's a general population product. Even though, let's say, like 80% of people don't like ketchup, you're still dealing with like a very large pool of potential buyers. If that's what you're working with, the sample size ideally is 400 people as at a minimum. That gets your margin of error down to about 5%, which kind of used to be an industry standard, kind of still is. If you can only afford like 200 or 300, you're still going to learn something. But 400 is usually my minimum recommendation for this. Now, I 100% recommend taking advantage of those respondents that you get from Question Pro, those 100, and just fielding it and see what happens. I think you're going to be pretty excited by the results. Then you can open up to more. You don't have to decide ahead of time how much you're going to do. But I almost always suggest 400 as a minimum, but more is better. Like a survey to 800 people is a lot more valuable than a survey to 400 people. That's just the case. So that's usually my rule of thumb, but it kind of depends a little bit on the context.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, I think that sounds absolutely fair. 400. Not totally out of the park to get, but it's definitely significant.
Hmm.
Wonderful. I think another thing which the audience would absolutely love to have a little more into, and maybe we can do a separate session on that, is just about the different ways that we can do product market fit research. I know
Hmm.
there are a whole bunch of different methods of doing it. It's just diving a little bit into that and seeing, what's the benefit and what are the pros and cons of each method, and where
Yeah.
what fits where.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, this is what I presented is like an early stage, startup market research survey.
Mhm.
Once you have taken those findings and made some actual, moving forward decisions with those, you can do things like, hey, so we're going to brand the product the way that we learned in the survey, people that resonates with people. We're going to present that now, that exact, brand, the UI, the interface to 40 actual users or something like that, using some of other tools that Question Pro has. I mean, Question Pro is a full suite. It's the full rounded suite of market research, UX, UI, CX, even. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do once you have some specifics from a survey like this to dive into other like product market fit type questions. the thing I mentioned is what I just mentioned is more of like a UI kind of validation, branding validation. But other things too. I mean, some teams will make use of what we call like omnibus surveys, or like they just want to learn more about the market, and they don't necessarily, maybe they've done a survey and they've learned that yes, like females ages 18 to 29 are the most interested in my product. But I don't know where they shop online for this category. So you can do other follow-up studies like that. Just that'd be very low cost, a short survey, a quick survey to kind of tack that onto your findings. But yeah, there's a lot of possibilities. It's kind of never ending, really.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And maybe we can do another session where we dive deeper into this. And I'm sure that'll take us the whole hour in itself.
Yes, yeah, it would. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. I think we've covered all the questions key questions we had for now, and we'll continue to address questions over the next few days, over the week. So if anybody has questions, you can reach out to Nick directly on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me, comment on any of our posts, and we'll definitely make sure we get back to you. You can set up a call to help walk you through anything you need. And for anybody who's registered, we will be sending the recording of this session as well. So, and really great insights out of this. So, I think it'd be really brilliant for larger teams to actually be able to see this as well. So, we'll send out the recording in a few hours after this.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
And please reach out,
Yeah.
like you said, with any questions. Great.
Yep. Thank you so much, Nick. And thank you, everybody, for joining in. Have a great day.
Thanks.